The ListBox control is an object that presents a list of textual items, and that list can be scrolled through, so it can present more items than what appears in that box. It's often used for allowing the user to make selections as an input, and it can also be used for output of providing multiple items to the user. Oftentimes we'll use a ListBox to access records of a database. So here I have information about all the presidents, and I can click on a president, such as Thomas Jefferson, and see his birth and death years, his years in office, his home state, and party affiliation. And I can do that with any of the presidents here in this list. So I can make selections and handle those programmatically as part of a process. And in some cases, and I'll show you this a little bit later, we can make multiple selections. We have an option that can choose to make the list box allow one selection or multiple selections. We can also programmatically add and remove items from the list box. Let's look at an example of how to work with the selected items of the list box. In the toolbox, you'll find the list box control in the common controls, and you can drag it and place it on the form, or you can draw it out from corner to corner. In this example, I've created a list box over on the left that has some of the named colors that are part of Visual Studio. And I can click on a color, and it will change the color of the form to the color I've selected. You can see the code here. I am handling the selected index changed. Now our list box has index numbers starting with 0, and when I click on an item, we are changing the selected index. I'm also changing the selected item. So the index is the number, the selected item is the text of the selection. So every time I click an item in the list box, I'm going to run this code, and the functional part of this sub-procedure is me.backcolor, so my form's backcolor, equals color.fromName, and I can specify a string, one of the named colors that are part of Visual Studio or part of HTML. So color.fromName, and I'm specifying LSTColors, that's my list box, .selected item, that's the text of the item I selected, and that's actually an object, so if you have option strict on, we want to convert that to string. If option strict is off, you can get away without the .toString, but it's good practice to put that there. So LSTColors.selected item is the text, converting it to a string, that's our named string, and we can get that color. The items is a collection property of the list box and contains all the items in the list box. We can add and remove items from that collection, and we'll look at that a little bit later in the video. There's lots of events, but primarily we'll use the selected index changed event. There are some other properties, one that allows that scroll bar to always be visible. It's a Boolean property. Selection mode, and I can choose one or multiple, actually two different settings of multiple. Again, we'll look at that in a minute. And then the sorted property is a Boolean of either true or false. If it's set to true, the items in the list box will be alphabetically sorted. That's really useful as we're dynamically adding and removing items from the list. Here's another example of list box. We have condiments of for hot dogs, and the user can choose here multiple ones. So I've set the selection mode to multi-simple. Allows me to turn those selections on or off by clicking them. The multi-extended allows me to select a range with a shift click. I can select one and then shift click and select another one along with everything in between it. So here in this example, I have chosen Gouda cheese, mustard, onions, and relish. And at the bottom of this label, it's showing your hot dog will come with cheese, Gouda, mustard, onions, and relish sweet. The code for this, again, I'm using a select index changed. I'm setting condiments to a string of nothing plain. So if they don't choose anything, we're going to say your hot dog will come with nothing plain. And then at the LST condiments, that's the name of my list box, .selected indices. So it's keeping track in that property of all the index numbers that have been selected. And if that count of those indices is greater than 0, I mean there's at least one item selected, then I'm going to set the condiments equal to nothing. And here I'm using a loop. We haven't talked about loops yet, but that's coming just around the bend in the next lessons. So I'm using a for each loop here for each item in lstcondiments.selectedItems. So again, there's a property of selected items. It's a sub-collection of the items that have been selected. And I'm going to set condiments plus equal. So I'm concatenating the condiments, a comma and a period, and then the item, which is each item that's been selected, and converting that to a string. That next makes the loop repeat until it's gone through all the items in lstcondiments.selectedItems. Now I'm starting with the very first one with a comma and a space. So after my loop, I am clearing or getting rid of that comma and space that precedes the value of condiments. So it's going to equal condiments.substring 2. So I'm going to start with the third character. Then lblchoices.text equals your hot dog will come with and whatever the condiments are. Here's an active demonstration of the program. I have my condiments. Down at the bottom it says choose your condiments. So if I choose jalapenos and mustard, notice it's saying your hot dog will come with jalapenos and mustard. If I get rid of the mustard, clicking it again, now it's just going to come with jalapenos. So get rid of jalapenos, it's now coming with nothing or plain. And I can check as many of these as I want and just keeps adding those to that output. Here's another example of a list box over on the left that has some flavors in it, and the user can add flavors to that list. So there's a text box here, we can add a flavor. I typed in Rocky Road. Click the add button and notice the code here at the top is lstflavors.items. Remember we have an items collection, and in that collection there is an add method where I can specify the text I want to add. And the text I want to add here is txtnewflavor.text. That's the text in my text box. If I want to remove an item, I can select it and use the remove at with whatever that index is. So my code here for the remove selected button is I'm doing index as an integer, and it's going to equal lstflavors.selectedIndex. If that index is a -1, meaning nothing is selected, then I'm going to show the message box of please first select an item to remove, and the title is nothing selected. Otherwise, the else fork here is lstflavors.items.remove@, and what I'm specifying for the argument is the index number of the item they've selected. That will remove it from the list. There's a button here to clear everything, and again I use a dialog box, a message box, to verify that they want to clear everything in case they accidentally click that button. So if they say yes, then we're going to take lstflavors.items and specify the clear method of the items collection. And then finally we have a button here called Everyday, and those are the 6 flavors that would be offered every single day. I want to start with that, so if I clear it, I can click the Everyday and add those 6 flavors in, and that's where I start with the application. Those are pre-populated into the list box. So black cherry, chocolate, lemon, peanut butter, strawberry, and vanilla. Here then is the live demonstration of that. So I've added in Rocky Road. I click Add, and we'll see Rocky Road is added to my list box. Notice it came in here at the bottom. I didn't set this up to be sorted. So I'm going to pause here and change that, and we'll see that how it works with the sorted property set to true. I've changed the sorted property to true, reran the application. This time I have Rocky Road as my flavor. I'm going to click Add, and notice it goes in alphabetically in the list. I'm going to add in blue raspberry, click Add, and again it's alphabetical in the list. If I'm going to get rid of something, I'm going to take this blue raspberry, and instead I'm going to get rid of that. If I click the remove selected, it deleted the item. However, if I have nothing selected and I click the item, it's going to tell me please first select an item to remove. The clear all button verifies I want to clear the list. If I say no or cancel, nothing happens. But if I say yes, it removes all the items from the items collection. And then the Everyday button adds those items back in, the everyday items. So it's adding in black cherry, chocolate, lemon, peanut butter, strawberry, and vanilla. That's how a list box works. We will use list boxes quite a bit throughout the course. From this point forward, they are very common. Though as we move forward, we'll also use other collections that work the same way but are not necessarily visible. The collection is being stored in memory, and we can pull information and add information or remove information from a collection. And there are lots of different collections. We'll start working with arrays, but then there will also have generic lists, and then there are also dictionaries and queues and other types of collections. We'll start with arrays, and then we'll move into list as we begin creating our own custom classes. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the Programming Practicum playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos I create, you can click my picture in the top right to subscribe to the channel.